The bills before us today are the product of hard work from our chairs and our ranking members to make some very tough choices under very tough circumstances to address pressing challenges that we face. They may not be what any one of us would have written on our own, but they are solid bills that provide necessary resources to keep our families safe and healthy, our military the best in the world, our economy strong, our communities growing and thriving, and to keep us moving forward, not back. As with the 8 other bills we've already passed in overwhelming votes, these are serious bipartisan bills that can actually be signed into law and which can actually get our country and our communities much needed resources. Of course, we all understand and have talked a lot about the challenges the debt limit deal has forced onto this process. And as I said last week, Vice Chair Collins and I have heard from members on both sides of the aisle, both on and off the committee, about their serious concerns that cuts to vital non-defense programs and caps on defense spending could hurt our country. We've been clear throughout this process that we share those concerns, which is why Vice Chair Collins and I have worked together in a bipartisan way to make full use of the tools allowed by the debt ceiling deal and regular appropriations process to address those concerns and ensure that we do write and pass the strongest bills possible with the broadest bipartisan support possible. We reached bipartisan agreement to respond to some of our nation's pressing challenges with additional emergency appropriations provided to the subcommittee, just as we do every year. And let me say again, as is well within the bounds of the debt limit deal. And that includes additional emergency funding in 3 of the bills before us today, $8 billion going to defense, the majority of the $5.7 billion in non-defense emergency funding going to Homeland and Labor HHS. Just as Vice Chair Collins and I always look to find common ground to get good bipartisan outcomes, these final bills we are considering today reflect a lot of hard work by our subcommittee leadership to find common ground. I really appreciate the time and effort that went into the bills before us. I hope our colleagues will join us in not only recognizing this hard work, but by passing these bills out of committee with strong support. Because let's be clear, in passing these bipartisan bills today, we aren't just sending legislation to the Senate floor, we are sending a message to the American people that we take our responsibilities seriously to keep our government funded, address problems in their lives and the challenges the country faces, and make sure that the voice of the Senate and of our constituents is heard loud and clear in this process. We have made incredible progress on this goal so far, 40 hearings this past spring, the first markups in years, and 8 of the 12 funding bills through committee already in overwhelming bipartisan votes. So I hope today that we can finish strong in the same bipartisan spirit that has characterized this committee's work this year by passing our last 4 bills. Let's run through the tape. Let's show the country that Congress can work in a responsible bipartisan way, that we can actually work together to reach agreement and solve our problems and help make people's lives better. And that's what passing these bills will accomplish. First of all, we will consider our defense bill, which makes critical investments to strengthen our military. We know our competitors are doing everything they can to gain ground, and that's why it is important that this bill provide our military needed funding to make sure we do not fall behind, and that we invest in our defense capabilities in critical regions like the Indo-Pacific, because we know a strong American military can help deter conflict around the world. And as I have said so many times, having a strong military means more than just investments in weapons, equipment, or facilities. When it comes to defending our country, our most valuable asset has always been the brave and talented women and men who are willing to put their lives on the line to keep our country safe, which is why the funding in this bill to support military families, things like mental health care for our service members and child care and early learning for both kids and their parents, is truly mission critical. I'm very grateful to Senator Tester and Vice Chair Collins and their staffs for all their work to make sure that we have a strong bipartisan defense bill. Next, we will consider the Interior Bill, which is absolutely critical to our country's and our kids' futures. After all, we can't have thriving communities without thriving ecosystems and clean water, clean air, and continued action to address the climate crisis and the many threats it presents, which have been on full display this summer with record heat and dangerous wildfire smoke. And if we expect other nations to trust us to live up to our global commitments, we have to keep our promises right here at home to our tribes. That means honoring their sovereignty and delivering on key federal investments that we've promised, which this bill does, by sustaining funding for the Indian Health Service and providing additional resources to support our tribal families and protect tribal treaty rights and address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and more. The funding in this bill is also incredibly important when it comes to protecting our kids from breathing polluted air, or drinking contaminated water, or being exposed to chemicals like PFAS. Protecting keystone species like salmon and public lands like our national parks that are vital to our national identity and rural economies. And protecting our communities from wildfires and drought and other climate disasters. And on this last issue, it is especially critical that wildland firefighters do not have their pay cut. I know how important their work is to protect our communities and lands from wildfires, and I'm laser focused on making sure we take action on this by the end of this September. There's no question we have more work ahead, but this bill protects critical investments and keeps us moving in the right direction despite tough top lines. So I really want to thank Senator Merkley and Senator Murkowski and their staffs for hammering out a solid bill under difficult circumstances. Today, we will also be voting on the Labor HHS bill, which touches on so many investments I feel really represent the heart and soul of this country: healthcare, education, supporting our workers and retirees, and ensuring that everyone can live with dignity and respect. I'm glad we were able to sustain strong investments in so many of these issues, like continuing the bipartisan support I've worked to build for childcare. The childcare crisis is seriously holding back parents and businesses and everyone. So I'm glad we increased funding for childcare in this bill. This funding alone will not fix this crisis, but it is meaningful progress, and I will always keep pushing for bolder steps. We also have strong funding for the mental health and substance use disorder epidemic that has been devastating in every one of our states. Fentanyl overdose deaths have been skyrocketing in my home state of Washington and across the country. It is a tragedy and a crisis, and the funding in this bill is crucial to supporting the people fighting on the front lines and getting people the preventive care and addiction treatment that saves lives. And there are many other crucial investments in this bill: medical research into desperately needed cures, youth, mental health, underserved communities which are still recovering from the pandemic, students, helping them to afford a higher education, workforce training programs, keeping workers safe and putting dollars back into their pockets. I could go on. I will leave that to Senator Baldwin and Senator Capito to say more about absolutely vital investments in their bill, and I want to thank both of them and their staffs for the hard work that went into making sure this important bill is as strong as possible given the constraints and cuts we are facing. And finally, we hope to have the Homeland Security bill resolved and before us today as well, because our economy depends on our ability to ensure countless goods, as well as people, can move through our ports and borders in an orderly and timely way. Our security depends on our ability to do all of this while effectively stopping threats like sex and labor traffickers, drug traffickers, and fentanyl, which, as I just said, is absolutely devastating our communities. And of course, our reputation as the leader of the free world requires us to continue our long tradition of welcoming people from across the globe who are seeking safety from persecution and opportunities for a better life. This bill includes important investments for all of that vital work. I want to thank Senator Murphy and Senator Britt and their staffs for all the hard work that has gone into putting this critical bill. And as everyone knows, this committee knows this well, this process is never easy, and this year is no exception. But I will remind all of us, we have a responsibility to get our job done, and I've been very impressed by the work of all of our subcommittees and the work they have done to write the strongest possible bills with the broadest possible bipartisan consensus. None of these bills are any of us would have written alone, but they are thoughtful compromises that provide resources our country needs to navigate some of the biggest challenges we face. So I hope we keep that momentum up to date as we have in the past few markups by passing all 4 of these bills with broad bipartisan support.